Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Welcome to Health Oddity. You're listening to episode 56. We've had a great run of guests over the last few weeks. Jim Hatcher last week, Paul McElroy in 2 parts. Paul McElroy's podcast was highly downloaded, loads of listeners, and thanks again for tuning in, listening to us. We're over a year into this now, and we've got some top-notch guests. And again, this week we're going to bring you someone that maybe you're not aware of, and if you are, then it's going to be a total treat because you know what's in store for you. But first of all, I have to say that James is not here. He's skiving. He's a busy man, isn't he? Last time I saw James, he had his Instagram update was him in a jacuzzi, chilling out. So I don't know whether to believe him when he says he's busy. But what do you think, Peter?
Well, the weather's been quite nice the last couple of days, hasn't it? So, and then he's not here. And I'm seeing him this weekend, actually. So if he's got a tan, we'll know what's been going on.
We'll know what's going on, yeah. What about you, Peter? What are you up to?
Me?
Yeah.
You don't usually ask that, do you? I'm up to the usual sort of stuff. Been out training people this morning, and then I'm going out again after this straight away, actually. So as soon as we finish this, I'll be back outside training people. So yeah, you've gone quiet, Paul.
There we go. It's me using my microphone and it decided not to work. So yeah, it's a nice time of year to go out there, isn't it?
It's great. It's always a nice time of year. It doesn't get that cold in this country, so we're all right. I think our guest might disagree with that because he says he's in Orange County and it's probably a bit warmer over there, but it doesn't get that cold over here.
So it's about time I really introduce our guest. So we've got Harinder Singh, and he is someone I have been following ever since I found out that he was training with Paul McElroy. Now, Paul McElroy is my coach. He's Peter's coach. And if you were listening to the podcast with him a few weeks ago, he was trying to get James to become his client as well. So none of us are going to get away from Paul's clutches. But when I started seeing what he was doing with Paul, I could see, I delved deep into your background, Harinder. And I found someone who was really interesting, someone who I thought, well, I've got to find out more about this guy and we've got to interview him. He is a accomplished martial artist. He runs the Jeet Athletic Association in California, in Orange County. He has a plethora of other interests in terms of mindset, in terms of coaching coaches, in terms of just developing the physical attributes of any individual and the effects that will have on the mindset. He has so many different interesting stories and so many different philosophies that he's managed to tie together and create something really, really interesting. And I just wanted to get him on this podcast to just pick his brains, to listen to how he approaches some of the problems that our clients have and some of the problems you may be having, and with a particular emphasis on the mindset and how the physical body and the development of the physical body can really, really sharpen the mind. So Harinder, thank you very much for coming in and spending some time with us today. How are you and what are you up to?
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for having me on. It's a great honor, and a big shout out to my coach, Paul McElroy, a genius, a super strong man, and a wonderful human. So I'm blessed to have him in my life, and through him, the connection to you guys. So we're all A12 family. So you guys are like cousins from over the sea.
Well, that's it. So I'm an amazing 12 certified instructor, and so is Harinder. So we everyone has a thirst. I mean, a lot of the people we get on this podcast have a thirst for learning, and they're kind of the eternal student. And obviously the route to mastering things is to keep your ears open and to listen to people who know a lot. And that's what we're here to do with you, to listen to you and see what we could soak up. So how would people know you? What are you? What's your main focus at the moment? And what are you doing for people at the moment?
So people would know me from a few different maybe industries. One of them is the martial arts industry. So if you're military, government agencies, or you're martial arts school owners, you read Black Belt Magazine, you're associated with Century Martial Arts, you'll know of me. If you know of Bruce Lee, you'll know of me. Jeet Kune Do. I teach Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do. I teach Kung Fu, like Wing Chun and Tai Chi, the ancient one. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, Filipino knife fighting. So I've dedicated my life to the martial arts and the way of the warrior, you could say. And so that industry would know me like that. And in the Silicon Valley, executives and business folks would know me in the high performance space, where basically, you know, I get called in to help people deal with the chaos. So when people are in chaos, how do they perform? How do they raise their performance levels? How do they adapt to it? How do they deal with stress? And the big word for me is that people know me for is flow. How do you get into the flow state on command? That is what I help people do, whether they are military operators, they are law enforcement agencies, or martial artists, or businessmen, or businesswomen, Silicon Valley executives, you name it, entrepreneurs, coaches. That's my main focus is. I teach people how to kick ass, fight, but I also teach them how to get into flow, because the state of mind that you're in, the level of presence that you have, the amount of balance that you have, your ability to adapt in chaos is what we don't see. They're the hidden attributes. You could be trained and have the techniques, you could be great, but when life punches you, like Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Can you roll with it? Can you roll with the punches? And this is a skill. This is a skill that can be developed, and there's a science to it, and there's a process to it, and that's kind of what I do.
So with this kind of ability, developing this ability to see the world as it is, to see a situation more clearly whilst under pressure, is the angle that you're coming from physical development through to the mind, or how does the body and the mind connect for you? I mean, what is your route to, because there's lots of different programs. There's like Stephen Covey, there is Napoleon Hill, and all of them have some way of developing the mind so that it's calm under fire, that it can see the world clearly, can think ahead. What is your unique take on that?
That's a great question. And I think there's three bodies. You know, in the ancient Taoist teachings, Kung Fu teachings, there's three bodies that we have. There's the physical body, that's the form, right? There's the energy body, right? You could call it the chi, the bioelectricity. You could call it the prana. Many different cultures have it there. It's your energy. How much energy do you have, right? And then there's the spirit body. And I'm going to give everybody a non-woo-woo working definition of the spirit, right? And what that is it's the spirit is the sum total of the thoughts of the mind and the feelings of your heart. So you can go from body energy to spirit, or you can go from spirit energy to body. The energy is the medium, it's the vehicle that connects the physical to the mind and the heart. So, you know, people can say body, breath, intent, or emotions, right? And so oftentimes one of the things is that when we take a look at the spirit, the reason it's the sum total of the thoughts of the mind and the feelings of the heart is if you're feeling down, you're going to be down. If you're feeling sad, you can be sad. That's your emotions. But now if you're up in your head and you're thinking all the time and you can't stop and you cannot be present, you don't have the ability to listen. You're trapped in a pattern. You're trapped in I, me, or you're frantically emotional, and each one feeds each other. So there's that state. Or your mind can be empty and you're an observer, and your heart can be feeling. It can be ready to connect. It can be ready to create. It can be ready to adapt. So it's that state. Can we get to a state from the spirit of an observer, an unbiased, non-judgmental observer? And the physical body, I mean, let's be honest. If we're not training the physical body, the vehicle, okay, the temple that we have, I mean, what's the point? If you take a look at in the jungle, the weakest die first. So there's a part of us that's an animal, and we have to express that killer instinct, that animal instinct. We have to be able to move. We have to be out of pain. We have to be out of weakness. That's one level. But the next is there's a gift of strength. the gift of strength. I mean, man, you know, like a lot of people, sometimes what ends up happening, I'm sure you guys are aware that there's people who work on the mind, all the way on the mind, but they're not strong. So then I ask you a question. I say, okay, you work on the mind all you want. There's a burning building. Can you run in there and help somebody? What use is you working on the mind and being calm if you can't run in the building and help the person? And on the flip side, you got the guys going in, pumping iron. They're super strong, but they have no stillness of the mind. You know, they go work out and it's an escape. They work out and then they come back home and their mind is always running. They're always worried about what people think, and they have no peace. They have no freedom. So you can't really have one without the other. I think we have to take a look at the complete individual, the animal side and the higher consciousness side, right? So you have that killer instinct, survival-based part of us, which is the physical, and then you have the higher consciousness, which is you know, at a higher level. But they must be trained together.
That's brilliant, and you can take that even further as well to make it even. So the whole point in this podcast is we're trying to make kind of health and well-being and all of that more simple. We're trying to simplify it for people because there's so much complication out there. So, you know, you're saying you want to be strong, or you know, you want to you know, take the physical side of it, but then people are like, well, I need to be flexible first. So you get, so like you said, you get the strong guy who can't quiet his mind, or the mindful guy who isn't strong. But then, say in the strength world or in the physical world, you can do loads of yoga, saying you're dead flexible and everything, but you can't pick things up without hurting yourself still. Or you can be super strong, but you can't bend over. So it goes even further, doesn't it? So when people are trying to work out how to negotiate this stuff, where would you suggest to start? Where would you begin?
You have to be able to answer why you're working out.
Yeah.
That's where it starts. You know, you have to understand. So, you know, we always say in the art of war, know yourself and know your enemy. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you're sure to succeed. Know yourself, don't know your enemy, 50-50. Don't know yourself, don't know your enemy, you're doomed to fail. And what ends up happening most of the time is people start to work out. And if somebody comes to me and said they want to work out, I said, why? Why do you want to work out? Oh, I want to work out because I want to look better. So you're telling me it's a superficial thing you want to work out for. Oh, I want people to say I look good. So you want approval from other people.
Yeah.
So if we're coming at that, if they don't understand that that's why they're working out, they're never going to make it. They're never going to make it because it's an outside-in approach. They're seeking. Most people, let's be honest, most people when they work out, the majority of people that go to the gym, they're going to the gym because they want approval from other people. There's very few, right?
I think as well, we had Dan John on who said basically people think they've got a goal, like what you said, I want to look like this, or I want this, or I want people to think this of me. What they actually want is just not what they've got.
Yes.
They don't want to go from A to B. They want to go from A to not A, to something else. And they don't even know what it is. So yeah, you're totally right. It's like, if you don't know what you want, there's no point in there's no point in starting, but you don't know where you're going to go. You don't know what direction you want to go in.
Yeah, if you're not aware of what is you know, we always say if you're going to go to war, you have to know why you're fighting. You have to know who you're fighting. Yep. And you also have to know what you're willing to die for. So if we don't know that ahead of time, for example, if you don't know why do you want to train? So you want a commitment. You guys are A12 coaches, you know that if somebody comes to me and they want to do A12, I'm going to sit down and interview this person because they're their biggest enemy is sabotage. And the sabotage is in the mind. The program is laid out. They follow the program, they're going to transform. But the thing that ends up happening is that people sabotage themselves. And it's that sabotage that they have to understand. That's knowing yourself. You have to know that when do I sabotage myself? What are the things that come up? How do I allow doubt to infiltrate my mind? They say doubt is the greatest enemy you can give greatest weapon you can give your opponent. But that's you're giving to the voice in your head. When do you give in? When do you give up? So those are the things that we need to understand. And oftentimes what ends up happening is that we don't have something greater to pull us forward, and we're not attached to that. If we're not attached to something greater to pull us forward, we won't be able to get through the uncomfortable situations. And I think that's a precursor to being disciplined.
It's funny because I used to watch Arnold Schwarzenegger before his bodybuilding competitions. He used to go up to people and just say something that would put doubt in their mind, saying something like, "Oh, maybe if you just had a few more weeks, yeah, you would have been ready, wouldn't you?" You know, something that just kind of made them start sabotaging in their mind before they got onto stage. And it was a very powerful way of getting the upper hand. But it's interesting you talk about this mind and body connection, because I think, you know, historically in the Western world, when we look at, say, Greek philosophy, the mind and the body was trained equally. You know, you listen to some of the great philosophers, Socrates being one of them, talking about, you know, a man should know his body, a man should invest in his body, and should be physically in his prime as well as his mind. And I would say, probably in the 20th century, that is separated as we became more discipline based, you know, disciplines of sciences, disciplines of the arts and things like that, particularly as things professionalized. And it doesn't surprise me that in many ways, that back in the 70s, when Bruce Lee, for example, first came to the States, the Eastern philosophy and the martial arts in general really combined the mind and the body in such a compelling way, in such a complete manner, that it was probably a massive thirst for it. So do you see that changing now? Do you see that the West, for example, the US or Europe, UK, is seeing the mind and the body as one thing that needs to be trained together?
I think that because of the pandemic, we may have had a golden opportunity to shift towards that, because people all of a sudden can't do the things they could do. And now they're trapped in their mind. So they're starting to realize that the mind is, wow, they can't get away from it. You know, before, oh, let me get up and go to work. And, you know, they're doing work, but it's a distraction, right? They had so many more distractions. And one of the things that most people cannot be alone with is their own thoughts, because they cannot be alone. So then they will do anything and everything in their power, whether it's watch TV, whether it's working out, and there you go, the social media and all the different things to distract the mind. If we think about it, we live in a world of distractions. That older generation you were talking about, there was way fewer distractions. And that mind-body philosophy, like you said, it's in an Eastern philosophy, it's in European older philosophy. It's a worldwide philosophy. It's not to just one area of the world. And I think the biggest thing is the distractions is one thing, but you know, it's comfort. Comfort is the enemy, and what happens is people try to avoid pain as much as possible, or discomfort as much as possible. The older people, older generations, when you go further back, you go in time, life was more and more uncomfortable. And one of the things is when I teach people chaos, what ends up happening is people don't have a good relationship with chaos. What it is that chaos is natural. It's actually nature's way. It's a natural phenomenon. Because in chaos, you have creation and destruction. There's yin yang. The creation leads to destruction. Destruction leads to creation. So if we look at the seasons, you know, we've got one season here in California where I am, because I moved here on purpose. But I used to be from Toronto, Canada, so I really know the seasons. They change. One creates, one destroys, and they create, right? And that cycle of creation and destruction is part of chaos. That's chaos. But what happens is that we think that peace is the absence of chaos. And that's the big thing. And we're always seeking comfort. Today's society is a very comfortable society. Okay, I understand the pandemic was very difficult for a lot of people, but man, the majority of people got to spend the pandemic at home watching Netflix. So let's be honest, like, you know what I'm saying? Amazon could deliver groceries to you. There's a lot of people that were impacted very badly. So I'm not trying to make light of it, but the fact is the majority of people that went through the pandemic got to go through it in a much more comfortable way than you could say maybe the plagues that went in the past. So what are we looking at? The issue is peace is a choice in chaos. You choose peace when there's chaos. It's not the absence of chaos. Just like courage is a choice when you're scared. You choose to be brave. Happiness, you choose it when you're struggling. It's not the absence of the struggle. And I think that's something that's really important, is You have to embrace chaos. You have to introduce it. You have to make yourself comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And that has to be the skill. That's how we grow, because chaos also leads us to grow. And if we're not here on earth to grow, then what's the point of this whole thing? We're not here for like window shopping. You know what I mean?
What compels you to be uncomfortable then? I mean, why would you? So you've got a long history of you don't get to your level of skill in your disciplines without having done it for a long time. But at some point, you must have chosen to be uncomfortable for prolonged periods of time. And most people are unwilling to do that. Why are you willing to do that? And
it's my first jujitsu lesson. My first teacher was a student of Hickson Gracie, and my first jujitsu lesson, you're drowning on land, right? That's basically what ends up happening. You're getting choked out, you're drowning, there's chaos everywhere, you can't move, and you're losing your breath. And it's a feeling of getting smashed under a wave. It kind of feels like that. And the first lesson is you can't fight a wave, okay? You don't have enough skill yet to ride the wave. So the first skill has to be that we have to make ourselves calm and comfortable in the wave before we can learn what to do with the wave. And so that's when that training started at that time. And because of my teachers, and then in my Kung Fu teacher taught me the same thing. He said, embrace pain as your brother and he'll walk with you forever. And I was like, wow, okay, I understand. If you talk to Paul, he'll tell you the same thing about the pain thresholds. It's all about pain and managing the pain thresholds. One of my other teachers, Dennis Rogers, one of the world's strongest men. I don't know. I'm sure you guys are aware of him.
We had Dave Whitley on the podcast, Iron Tamer, who's been a student.
Yeah. Well. Shout out to him, another good friend and coach of mine. And so through Dave Whitley, I met Dennis Rogers and became one of his apprentices. And he told me the same thing. He said, pain is the threshold. He's like, everybody can do amazing things, but they stop once they hit pain. They don't understand how to override pain progressively, how to train the mind to get past that. You know, I'm not saying go out and do crazy stuff, but I'm saying what is that pain is discomfort. How do we train the mind to do that? Now, what happens is that when you override pain, there's a pituitary pain response. The pituitary pain response in the brain stops us from doing things. But once we hit that and we override that pain response, we have an instant dump of epinephrine, norepinephrine, serotonin, dopamine, and all the endorphins rush through the body, and you get a euphoric feeling. And that feeling is a priceless feeling. But many people will not experience it because they quit too soon. Maybe runner's high, right? You bonk, and after you bonk, you get your second wind. When you're wrestling, when you're a combat athlete, same thing. You're completely exhausted, tired, but then you click into another gear. Whether you're bending steel, it doesn't go, and then you click into another place. It's that. And so very early, I realized that using the breath, the posture of the body to control and get alignment, and directing the mind on the breath and the alignment and making little micro adjustments. Because the thing is that oftentimes when people are in hell, and now this goes across from when you're training to in life, when you're in hell, people seek heaven. But the thing is that how can we make the micro adjustments to make ourselves comfortable in hell and eventually transform hell into heaven? And that becomes a skill that nobody can take from you, especially in life and death situations, extremely uncomfortable situations. And I had to learn that very early for myself, my own preservation, but also as I'm working with military and government agencies, that's the foundation of what the training has to be, is how do we bring ourselves down, right? We've all been in a situation where maybe you're giving a job interview, for those listening, the normal, the regular folks, or you're all of a sudden something happens, somebody calls you, they say your son is sick, somebody's had an accident, plethora of things, you lost a loan on your house, also heart starts to pound, the armpit sweat starts to go, right? Your breath, you start to get like that in the breath. So it doesn't matter what the situation was that triggered it, that's what happens. And that's life everywhere. But we have to be able to, in that situation, slow down, catch ourselves and slow down by managing our breath, managing the posture, and being able to go time out.
So,
and pause.
So that's a great skill. But the modern probably processing of that message would be no pain, no gain, wouldn't it? Someone would just, it means I just have no pain, no gain, got to deal with the pain, man up.
Yeah.
How would you kind of, because I mean, if I was reading like a free magazine on a railway or something,
Right.
they would interview you and the headline would be no pain, no gain. Where's that differing for someone who's never experienced that subtlety that you're talking about?
That's a wonderful question. You know, no pain, no gain is like that push harder, but push harder is not always the solution. I'm saying relax harder.
Yeah.
It's the opposite. It's a micro adjustment to make yourself. I'm not saying, but okay. So great question. You guys been ever trapped in a big wave, or you've seen the big waves that are there, and maybe you've experienced it, or listeners have. Let's say you have a huge wave coming, okay, and this is one day I almost lost my life this way. I was conducting an event in Hawaii, and they took me to a place there called Sandy Beach. And Sandy Beach is known for a shore break of 12 to 15 feet for body surfing. And so you're standing in this much water, and all of a sudden there's a 12-foot overhead wave that appears out of nowhere, right? And sometimes what happens is my students think that I can do things that I've never done before. I always thought somebody was going to teach me, you know, how to body surf. I've never body surfed before. I know I'm a good, strong swimmer, but I've never body surfed. So they just took me out into the wave, and then they said, duck dive. And I look up, and there's this giant wave. The shore is 50 feet away. I can't make it. And I just see them, what it looks like, dive into the wave. And, you know, when you have a small wave, you dive through it, no problem. What happens when you dive into a wave like this? It sucks you up, takes you up to the top, body slams you onto the ground. And then everything becomes like you're in a washing machine. It's all black. You don't know what up is. You don't know what down is. Many people die in these types of situations. But through the training of continuously being choked and being in those situations, it was a place I had been before many, many times. So my body kicked in and was like, oh, you're going to die. But then, nope, we're just going to relax. We're going to relax. We're going to let it catch. We're going to last a little bit longer. We're going to relax. We're going to last a little bit longer. We're going to relax. We're going to last a little bit longer until I could get my feet on the floor somehow and push myself up and take a big gasp of air. I don't know how long I was under. Then I learned lesson number 2, that waves come in sets, and it happened to me the second time. Pulled under the whole thing, somehow make it out again. But why? Because I'm just relaxing a little bit longer. Now, if you, and I get my feet up, take a breath, and finally get to the shore. If we say no pain, no gain, and train harder, push harder, I would have drowned. How can you push harder against the force of nature? There's no pushing harder. It's not going to happen. And then I sat there and I watched the waves for like 30 minutes as I was completely exhausted. Never felt like that in my life, that level of exhaustion in my life. And my friend who had taken me there, I was like, hey, you told me, you guys, what is a duck dive? I don't know what a duck dive is. I just saw you guys would look like dive into the wave. And a duck dive is, those who don't know, maybe this will save your life one day, is there's about this much room. There's about a foot between the floor where the wave doesn't impact, and it's completely still. So when that wave comes, they duck dive, they hit their chest actually to the floor of the ground as the wave passes over. And it's completely still. And so I watched the waves for a while, and I was like, well, I have 2 choices: go away defeated, or go back and face this monster where I almost lost my life. And once he told me what to do, I was like, okay, I understand. So I sat there and watched it for a while, got the courage, and went back out and did it. And when I did it, it was one of the most euphoric feelings ever, because I was choosing peace by not resisting, not fighting, but finding the little hole, like the center of the storm right there. And you just feel the whole force go by. And down there, it's nothing. And so, I think the whole concept of no pain, no gain is very incorrect. And for those who've been trained by Paul's methodologies, it's about, progressive increase, small percentages at a time, exposing yourself to discomfort to the point with the body, you trick it. So you increase its capacity, a little bit at a time. And that's the same thing with all good training methods, whether they're mindset methods or they're, whatever your profession may be, or fitness. There has to be a logical, scientific progression that leads you and expands your uncomfort zone little bit and little bit at a time. Because what happens if you go in and you just stretch it, it's going to snap. You're going to get hurt, or you're not going to come back and do it again. And so,
well, that's where it comes in. I mean, I've like, I've done stuff on this in the past and what have you, and this is why, like listening to what you're saying there, I totally get it. Not the wave thing, because we're in the UK and we don't really like surfing over here. Isn't quite the same as it is in Hawaii. But anyway, but
in December.
Yeah. But when I talk to people, I explain to me, like we were talking about earlier, setting goals and stuff. Someone's where they are now, and then they've got this big goal. So all they're thinking about is the goal. And what you've just said about, like, what Paul says and things like that, it's like incremental. You're not thinking about the goal. You're thinking about, what do I need to do now? And then what do I do tomorrow? And then what do I do the next day? And then it's from now, because people might see someone like yourself and think, I want to be like that. So, and like you say, stretch it and go, I want to be like that. I'm going to try and do that as quickly as possible. And you've spent your life, you've dedicated your life to it, right? And then what tends to happen, from what I see, is someone's got that goal and they're going along trying to get towards it, and then a life event happens, something happens, and it derails them completely. So they end up in this dip right at the bottom, and they're in hell, like you say, but they have all these future-based thoughts of like, I've got to get to that goal, so they have all these thoughts that are future-based that give them the anxiety and what have you to say, I'm not going to be able to get there because I've gone off course. Whereas if they just think about, right, where am I now? What can I do? It might put that off for a week or two or whatever, but just worry about where you're at now, have your present-based thoughts, and then you can actually bring yourself back to where you are, and then, deal with what matters now, and then you bring yourself back. Because what happens the way I explain it is, what happens if you're thinking about those future thoughts, you think it's too hard, and you go back to where you were, to where the comfort is. So you've expanded your comfort zone slightly, but you're like, right, I'm going back to where it was because it was nice there. And then until such times, so say it's like losing weight or something like that, until such times as you feel uncomfortable again, you're like, I don't like this anymore. I need to lose that weight. So you go and do it all again.
Yes.
You get the life event, and then you go back to the beginning and go, it's too hard. I'm not doing that anymore. And it's that cycle. So you could have taken that. You could have said, I'm never going surfing again because it's dangerous and I'm going to die. But you went back and confronted it because someone had told you, well, just do this instead. And you're like, okay.
Yeah, again, embracing pain as your brother. So if you do that, and that's what you just said there is absolutely wonderful, because when we go back to knowing yourself, what you have to know is your patterns. Because you guys are trainers, so you've seen that people who come to you that, let's go fitness kick, and then they fall off, the next time they're going to require even more energy to do the same thing. So every time you do that, you're conditioning the body, the mind, and spirit, and saying, you know what, we're quitters. So the body knows that, so it kicks in through 3 weeks in, right? 3 weeks, that's the time. 3 weeks in, the body kicks in and is like, nope, we're not doing this. And it will find a way to sabotage. Eat that cookie, eat that ice cream, and then, we did so good. Let's have it another day. And then all of a sudden you're missing workouts, life event happens. So really what people have to understand is, what are your reactions? You have to sit down and know your patterns. But more importantly, you have to know your reactions. So you have to study past victories and past defeats. Okay, so very important to do both. In any realm of your life, to understand what are your patterns. When I'm around group A, B, and C of people, how do I start to eat? We all know, hey, you go with a group of friends you haven't seen in a long time, and then you start acting like you're back in college, right?
Yep.
It's a pattern. They're triggering a pattern. They're triggering a pattern. Or maybe somebody you have that's a family member that you don't get along with, right? And you're doing great in life and you see them and then boom, they trigger this pattern inside you. So there's people that can trigger patterns. There's places. You can go to a place and be in a place that could trigger a pattern. So there's things that can trigger patterns. There's situations that can trigger patterns. So what we have to do is sit down and study our reactions and what are our patterns. And that's what we want to decipher is what are my reactions? Because at the end of the day, it comes down to conscious choices.
Mm-hmm.
How many conscious choices do we make throughout the day? And oftentimes when I ask my clients that, the answer most of the time, if they're honest, is zero. There's zero actually conscious choices. So for example, if somebody says, well, I made a conscious choice to brush my teeth. I'm like, no, that's a habit. That's not a conscious choice. You woke up, you brushed your teeth in the morning. I hope you did, but that's a habit. I wake up and I go to work at this time. That's a habit. These are habits. Most of the time we are reacting. So somebody, especially if somebody says something to you or something you don't like, or you're in a situation that you do not prefer, you're going to go into a reactionary pattern. There's people who are going to put you into a reactionary pattern. There's situations that are going to put you in a reactionary pattern. You have to know that and start to, on one level, intercept that. The second thing is conscious choices. Conscious choices is you choosing. And this is creativity. This is the part of being an artist. Whether you're in fitness, you're an artist. You're creating a sculpture. You're an artist. In your mind, you're an artist. You're growing. You're creating something new. So you have to have conscious choices when you're creating something new, and you have to train it. And an easy way to train it is to give you a formula. It's most of the time, people say E plus R equals O. So an event happens, there's a reaction, and that equals to the outcome. But what has to happen, the magic move, there ever was a secret, an event happens, you insert a pause, time out, you step back, you take a breath, you choose a response. That's your responsibility, your ability to respond. But most people, they can't respond because they haven't trained the pause. Because the pause is the precursor to the choice. So oftentimes when, hindsight is 20/20, so we look back at things and we're like, oh man, I wish I had done this. And oftentimes the choice that you didn't see, which you see now in the future looking back, was right there. You just didn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was right there. It wasn't like some choice that was outside the realm of your capacity to see. You just didn't see it. So you don't want the choice you made back. You want the moment before you made the choice. That's the moment we want, because in that moment we can see, oh shit, I'm reacting here.
I watched one of your a couple of your videos over the last few days on like your meditation stuff, and you were talking about quieting the mind, and people. There was, I think it was your TED talk where you were getting people to like try and switch the thoughts off or whatever, and it was like, or sit there for 5 minutes, and the first thing they're going to think, like, going to try not to think. The first thing they're going to think is, why the hell am I doing this? This is ridiculous. So it's impossible. And I've done this. I've worked with some Ishaya monks who do ascension meditation a few years back. And that was all about that. They would just sit down and count your thoughts, shut your eyes and count your thoughts over a minute. And there was loads of them. And then it's like, right, that's the problem. The problem isn't like what you're thinking and how many thoughts there are. Well, it's kind of how many thoughts there are. But the problem is, you attach emotion to each of these things and then they go off and think. Whereas if you just sit and watch them, let them pass and just let them go. You have the thoughts, but just let them go. And that's the pause, isn't it? And the massive thing I got from that was like, because in that moment, like you said, you have an event and then your reaction, and your reaction is because of whatever thought you had about that event. Is that actually you? Because if you're sitting there watching your thoughts go by and you're not attaching any emotion to them, who is it who's watching the thoughts? And it's like, that's you. That's who you want to go back to, isn't it? That's that's what you've just said. That's the pause. You want to go back to what you've just done before the reaction, and that's the person who's watching the thoughts. That's the way I see that, and that made a huge difference to me, because I used to go around reacting to everything. I used to trade for an energy firm, and that's like high powered, all this sort of caper, which is so far away from where I am now. But everything was about a reaction to what's going on around the world, you know, which would affect the market and all of that. And it was just, and everyone else is reacting around. So it creates this like atmosphere of like this reactionary atmosphere, and everybody is, and there's a lot at stake. So everybody has to be involved. So a lot of bad decisions get made. When
you work with very high achieving individuals in a variety of different industries. None of them have achieved their position by chance. Usually they're very capable people who think very deeply about their disciplines, and within their industry, they may be coaches, they may be thought leaders, much like you are in your industry, but they again don't see themselves clearly. But perhaps they lack the ability to take action on these specific things. So how do you deal with such high value individuals who are used to taking control, who are not used to being bad at things, that aren't used to being a novice? What are you saying to that person in order to get, because sometimes they've got so many things to do, and the idea of just becoming a student again is just like, oh, it's just another thing. Are they self-reflecting, or are you doing some process to make them think differently?
Well, one of the key things is you hit the word there. The other block to growth is control. So the higher value, the higher achiever the individual is, the more of a control freak they are. Now, that serves them to a certain point to get to a certain level of success. And let's say financial success or status success or money, you know, that kind of stuff, or in their company's ranking status. But what happens is for them to go to the next level, for them to actually have peace, because a lot of my clients, they have all the money in the world, but they can't buy peace. What good is that? They can't buy it because you can't buy peace. You no matter what, you can't buy peace. You can go to all the vacations in the world. You can go on private jets in the world. You're just running. You cannot buy peace. You could drink alcohol. You could try to numb yourself. You could try to stay busy. You cannot buy peace. So the majority of the people that come to me, they can't turn this off. They can't sleep properly at night. They cannot connect to people because they're control freaks. Okay. So what happens is that for you to be a higher performer, you have to understand, why is it that you need to control everything? And most people who are control freaks really are scared. What are they scared of? They're scared of failing. Why are they scared of failing? They learned somewhere when they were growing up that failing is not acceptable, that they will not get approval if they fail. So if you walk them down that path and they start to realize like, wow, so you're telling me that when I was a kid and my dad didn't give me approval and it said I was no good, I start to control everything because I need approval and because I'm afraid of what people think. And that subconsciously goes into every reaction of mine. And then because what happens with control freaks is when things are out of their control, they freak out. They lose their power of adaptability. I can't, and you know, many times you'll see, I'm sure you've had clients like that, you have family members like that, you have people who are super control freaks. As long as things are in their control, things are good, right? But you see that once they get shaken, as soon as they start to lose control, and they will do everything in their power to try to get control because they are afraid of the feeling of losing control. It's so uncomfortable to them. Why? Because to them, uncertainty is insane. They cannot sit with uncertainty. But if you look at chaos, you look at fear, real chaos, uncertainty is given. It's really the fear of the unknown is what people are afraid of. But how do you make yourself comfortable in the unknown? The first thing is that you have to let go of all the things that block you. So when you take a look at the flow state, right? And if I define the flow state for you, if I may, in four simple things. Number one, to be in the flow state, there is no internal chatter, there's no dialogue, there's no saboteur, there's no doubt present. Okay. Number two, time gets displaced. So when you're in an athletic endeavor or a life and death kind of endeavor, time slows down. The window of time, 1 second is like, slows down. If you're in a creative process or you're having a discussion or a connection like we are, time now goes the other direction. You're like, oh man, it was only 10 minutes. And then you're like, it felt like an hour. It was so great, the feeling, right? When people are creating, they're in their element. The next thing that happens is that there is an effortless feeling. There's an effortless awareness. There's no try force. When you're in the flow, you're not trying. It's absolutely effortless. And at the end of that, it's an enriching experience. Those things is when you know you're flowing. But now what's the opposite of that? The opposite of that is the mind is going, doubt is there, you're worried about the outcome, victory, defeat, people, what they think, okay? Now, what does that do to time? In those life and death situations, it speeds it up. In the creative situations, you're sitting there, you remember like when we were kids in school, you're waiting for recess, and you're like, it's never coming, right? Time just now goes the other direction. Then instead of an effortless awareness, you're trying so hard, no pain, no gain, let me try. And then the more you try, the more you get in your way, the more tension you create. And then instead of an effortless experience or an enriching experience, now we're having something that's absolutely draining and taking our energy away. So that is whether you're in flow or not. Those are the four kind of pillars. But what stops it? There's 3 blocks. And instead of trying to get into flow, let's try to figure out what's blocking us, because the flow state is our natural state. Kids are in flow all the time. We learn to get out of it. And so now we have to do all this work to go back. And there's 3 blocks: security, control, and approval. So I ask people, all right, we get to start doing the work. Are you an approval junkie? Are you a security cat? Or are you a control freak? Now they're all 3, but one is dominant. And that's back to knowing yourself, because you have to know yourself to let go. And you have to understand, why did you pick up that pattern? Because that's not you. Doubt is not part of the human condition. And I can prove it. Those of you who have younger children, you can see, okay, a child, from them to go laying on their back to standing up and walking, right? Would you guys agree with me to turn over takes them maybe 500 attempts as a baby?
At least,
now,
yeah.
Right, at least, right? Then to sit up, it takes them another 500. To stand up takes them at least another 500. I'm saying it could be more. To take their first step takes another 500. To start walking takes another 500. To start running takes them another 500. So we're saying about 3,000 to 6,000 failures before they could start running. Did they need a motivational coach to tell them, hey, you don't need any doubt, you can do it? No, they did it. Every time they fell, they laughed and they got up and they kept doing it. So it's natural for us. They fall, they laugh, like, giggle, and then they just keep going. But we learn doubt, we learn security, we learn control, we learn approval, we acquire these things. We acquire these things from our parents, our teachers, our friends, our experiences, our traumas, our rejections, our betrayals, our abandonments. And then we adapt all these things together and to survive, because we don't want to feel those negative, those things that make us not feel so good. So we adopt this personality. And that's not who we are. And that person can never be in flow.
I just think the way you explain it is absolutely fantastic and brilliant. It makes me think that really we're kind of detectives in a way, that the clues to this flow state are all around us. And most of us walk around with our heads down, not seeing how we could free ourselves from it. And we're socialized into it. But these clues about how to release ourselves are there. And we just need to have a more inquiring mind. I mean, I've got a client, I'll give it a shout out, it's Simon. And I train him on the A12 at the moment. And he's a businessman, he's done very well. And he says, look, you've got to be comfortable with risk, and you've got to understand it. You've got to make a failure as well. You've got to be comfortable with failure, because all the best entrepreneurs have failed, and they may have had multiple businesses that have gone under before they've got something that works. I mean, I've had failures in business, I've had failures in my career across the board, and that's why I quite like where I am at the moment, because it doesn't feel like I'm failing. I'm actually doing pretty well. So but you've got to be comfortable with that. And I think you've made that so clear to a lot of people that listen to this, who, we come weighed down so much with these things. And it's made me think about a lot of the thoughts that I have around my own self-limiting beliefs. this idea of financial security, this kind of fear of failure in things, this approval, and all these things makes me think I've got to do some internal work myself.
We all do,
Yeah.
we all do. And the thing is that's interesting about, when people say when they use words like waking up or enlightening, what they're talking about waking up is you wake up and like, oh shit, I'm making these choices based off this. That's called waking up. Making a conscious choice is called waking up. And to be enlightened means you're lightening the load. We're already, the thing is that we all have every person has such self-esteem and doubt issues deep rooted inside them that they think that they need something from outside of themselves to make them whole, complete, and total. But if they were to realize that they already were, but they adopted things that are blocking it, and they took on that mindset and started removing the blocks, you're starting first with believing that, hey man, I'm alive, I'm good, I have everything. I just need to get rid of the things that are stopping me. Like you said, the self-limiting beliefs. That changes your outcome and it changes your perspective. But it comes down to doubt. Doubt is the greatest enemy, and everything stems from doubt. And discipline is the greatest sword you have. And that's through the training, as you guys know, whether it's physical, mental, it's your energy, your discipline is what leads you, as Jocko Willing says, to freedom. And that's very true, because you're moving away from an old pattern to a new pattern, and you're embracing comfort, like you said with your business client. You have to invest in loss. People see, I've spent maybe close to now, I would say at least definitely over $250,000, close to $500,000, maybe, I don't know, I stopped tracking after $250,000. And what was it on people way better than me kicking my ass.
Yeah.
That's it. Every one of my teachers and every one of my disciplines just whoops my ass. So it's just loss and getting comfortable. Like, okay, you keep beating me, but I'm going to keep making myself more comfortable. I'm not trying to beat you. I'm trying to be comfortable in this chaos. And that is when I understood that was the master. Who's a master? Nobody's a master. That's mastery, because that allows us to grow, and that's it. And if we're forever open as forever a student, then it's fun, right? That's the whole thing. Is like, if we're not open, then what happens oftentimes is people really lack humility. And when they don't have humility, they're not open. And when they don't have humility, they're attached to people, places, and things. They're attached to outcomes. And so they need approval, security, and control. So those are attachments. But if you're humble and you're like, hey, you know what, man, I don't know everything. I'm willing to lose. I'm willing to be uncomfortable. I'm willing to grow. I'm willing to ask for help. That starts to change things. Now you open up to the realm of possibilities. And when you open, so my teacher always says, you have to be an explorer in life. But if you're not humble and open, you cannot explore. If you do not explore, then you don't discover anything new. If you don't discover anything new, you do not learn. If you do not learn, you don't grow. And if you don't grow, you can't create. So it's that process of exploring, discovering, learning, growing, and now you create. And oftentimes what allows us to do that is that big slap from the universe of chaos.
Without a doubt. I mean,
that's what you've just said there is brilliant. The I'm willing. It's because language in all of this, trying to explain it. I mean, you explain it like really well, but trying to explain things to people, or people are, I want this, I want that, or I need to do this, or I need this. And it's like, are you willing to do this? Are you like, and it's just that language of I am willing to do it, because that makes people think. I think they'll be like, oh, actually, I'm not willing to do that. And it's like, well, don't bother then. Go away and learn how to be willing to do it, or we'll teach you how to be willing to do it. Then it's inevitable.
Everything's got a price. Everything's got a price.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I just brought up when you were saying there, Harinder, it reminded me of a conversation I was having with Paul over, because he sends me my workout, and I sent an email saying, I think I've lost sight of why I'm doing this. I became too involved in the outcome. And he says, Paul, you just make this way too complicated. Literally none of that matters. You only have one thing to focus on, and focusing on that one thing will automatically take care of all those other things. Paul's one thing equals getting better. As long as you're doing that and you're getting close to every goal, getting better equals technique, doing the numbers, not giving up, and not focusing on negativity. There's just so many, and it's because I drift into that quite easily. I've got a groove that's been well worn over the years. It's why I'm so fascinated by physical training, because it is the mastery of the self. It's something that gives me very instant feedback. And I love the way you're bridging so many different ways of thinking of this, so that we just don't encounter too much, certainly with the strength coach. We deal with a lot of strength coaches and lots of really interesting thinkers, but your angle is just so refreshing. I've absolutely found completely fascinating. I'm just aware of the
kind words. Good teachers.
Yeah.
And lots of screw ups.
You've got to make silly mistakes, and you've got to look like a fool occasionally. And I think it's so great when you were talking about children and just how they do it with such a non-judgmental. They have no weight on their shoulders. They just experiment, and it's refreshing to see. And you see some of what you've lost sometimes if I'm in a particularly negative mood. I go, why can I not reclaim that? But I'm just aware of the time, and I don't want to keep you too long because I know you're extremely busy. But what we haven't delved into is, some of the specifics in martial arts and how they apply to older people. But there's just one question I'd like to ask on that subject. And because we are predominantly strength conditioning coaches, how important is strength in the martial art world?
Oh, it's vital. I'll give you an example from Paul. Okay, that was really a great one. He said, take Brock Lesnar, right, and you put him in a fight with a gorilla. And Brock Lesnar's been trained in all the different martial arts possible. Who wins the fight? It's the gorilla, right? Give Brock Lesnar a baseball bat with spikes at the end of it and put him in a fight with a gorilla. Who wins the fight? The gorilla. So, strength is I think, one of the things with strength is strength gives you that ability to control your body. Strength, when you, in the pursuit of strength, you learn to endure. You learn coordination through strength training. You understand through strength training, you, most importantly, also, when the quest for strength, you understand your weaknesses, your weak points. Oh, when I'm doing the deadlift, it's my lower back. You start to know yourself. If you're in pain and weakness, you're fighting pain and weakness and the enemy, number one. Okay, so that's oftentimes in a fight, we're always outnumbered because we're fighting ourselves and the opponent. For me, as long as I can win the war in my head and my body, the result is the result, so be it. Because I'm not going to give that person doubt. And I know if I've done my best, I can do my best. I can surrender to what the result will be. So strength is, I think, very important, because if you look simply in the animal kingdom, the weakest one dies first. Which is the weakest gazelle. The oldest, which is the oldest gazelle, the weakest gazelle dies first. So if you look, and we take it down even further, and you take a look from that perspective, the longer that you can run, the fastest you can run possible, the greater is the chance you would have of survival in the jungle. Do you guys agree with me? Because you need to just outrun the dude to the left. And I'm talking about sprint from A to B. So that's fight and flight go together. For me, there's three F's. There's fight, flow, and flight. So fight, so if we take a look at fight, what are we built to do? We're built to hold a stick and swing it. We're built to take a rock and throw it. We're built to grab around something, deadlift it up or squat it down. That's pretty much wrestling position, right? It's that tension. So that's what we're built to do. And throwing a rock is throwing a punch. Swinging something is swinging any kind of a weapon, something that we could pick up in our hands. The next thing too, if you take a look at how we run and we sprint, when we run and sprint, we have two open hands so that we can hold a weapon, so we can run properly. And in the running, the flight, how fast can I get from point A to point B? And whatever's stopping me is a good place for me to start to see what are the blocks that I need to get rid of. So as a test, can I run as fast as possible from point A to point B? And if I can't, let's start to figure those things out and get stronger in those areas by removing the limitations based on maybe pain or injury or inflexibility. And of course, there's people out there that they're just injured. But so now let's figure out how we're going to fix the injury. How are we going to get better? Because even if you can run a little bit faster than you did the other day, you're heading in the right direction. But how many people say after they stop sprinting hard, for example, after 30, how many people do we know that just do that as we can't for whatever reason in their mind? You look at sports and play. I think that's one of the other things that's missing is play. Why do we not play anymore? What's the point of strength and conditioning if we're not going to use it to play? What's the point? It doesn't make any sense. I want to be, for me in my position, of course, is, in martial arts and stuff like that, it allows me to have the vehicle to express it. But for people listening, ask yourself a question. You want to be throwing the ball with your kid at 70 years old? You want to outrun him at 70? You need to ask that question. You want to outrun your kid at 70 because that's going to do two things. That's going to give you another life. And it's going to show your kid, yo, my dad's no joke. And now you're changing your lineage of your kids against the cultural trends while we get older. That's just insane, right? That's insane. I'm 44 now, and I'm in better shape than I ever have been. And all across every single number and statistic there is, than I was when I was 20 years old, 21 years old, 22 years old. And at that time, I was an NCAA tennis player and a national martial arts champion and stuff like that. That guy would die today. So every year you can get stronger, you can get better, but that's just the self-limitations of your mind. So strength is at the core of it. But here's the thing. You have to balance your physical strength with your mental strength and the strength of your spirit. So it takes a very strong mind. If I challenge people here, can you sit in one position without moving for an hour?
Yeah.
I haven't managed in this conversation.
but I'm just saying, can we just sit still? Can we just sit still for, let's not even say an hour, for 5 minutes? Look how hard that is. That takes strength to be still. So I think that leads into stillness, and strength and stillness go together. And what I mean by stillness is there's stillness and stillness, where I'm just sitting, I'm not moving. Then there's stillness and movement. I'm still inside while I'm moving outside. And then there's stillness and movement under chaos. That means I'm still inside, I'm moving, and you're trying to punch me in the face, or life is trying to punch you in the face. It takes strength to develop stillness. It takes strength to develop the mind. It takes strength to meditate. It takes strength to deal with difficult situations. It takes strength to deal with discomfort. It takes strength to be disciplined. And so strength, you learn it, if you learn it from the physical, for people who don't know about strength, as soon as they start to see like, wow, look at my numbers, they're increasing, I'm getting stronger. That then starts to trickle into the rest of their life. That's why physical conditioning, because you can feel in the body, now you feel it. Strength is a feeling that you start to feel that you can build and increase over time, that can be numbered. It's empirical. Now your mind is like, whoa, wait a sec. If I could do that there, then I could do this here. Maybe I could do this in my relationships. And so I think strength is the ultimate skill.
Fantastic. What a place to end. Harinder, absolute pleasure talking to you. This has been one of my favorite podcasts. I think I've really enjoyed it. It's been absolutely fascinating. I'm going to go away. When this comes out, Peter, I'm going to listen to it a few times, I think.
That last bit, I was just listening. I've written loads of stuff down, and I've got loads more questions.
Yeah, I've got time, man. This is fun. I love doing this.
No, we'll not keep you any longer. We'll get you on again. Definitely. James is going to be gutted he missed this.
I've got a class at 6, so I've got to go. Yeah, well, maybe I'll call up the clients and tell them it's not happening today. I've got to. Sorry, guys. So look, maybe we can get you on again, because
I'd love to.
that'll be amazing to get you on again, and we can delve into some other areas that we could. I mean, some of these are just there's so much breadth and width and depth to the subjects, and with James here as well to bring his thoughts and his questions as well would be amazing. I mean, I'm training with Paul McElroy to do kettlebell sport, and that is mainly pain for the entirety of the endeavor. Yes. And I was thinking that is the main stumbling block for me is that discomfort and being able to deal with it, because it is uncomfortable throughout the whole thing. So I think this is why I'm going to be listening to this podcast again and actually thinking what I need to actually get in place, because I'm doing the training, I'm doing the numbers. I just got to get it up here, right? You know.
So if I give you a little suggestion there. So when you're doing that, I'll bet you that before you go to your training session, that you psych yourself out already. Like, oh my goodness, it's going to be so hard. It's going to take so much effort to do this. Okay, let's pump and then you start to have to pump yourself up to do it. And then now when you're in it, okay, there's the different cycle. You start it and you're like, some days you start good and then like, okay, how long is this going to last? Other days you start and say, oh, it's really slow. Man, this is going to be a tough one. And then that's going on the whole time, right? Does that sound about right?
That is me.
You just describe Paul and everything.
Okay. And then
that is the chorus going on in my mind. Yeah.
And then and then what happens is then sometimes people say to chunk something like that, for example. So they're like, okay, just focus on the first few reps, then you get halfway, and don't focus on the end in the beginning. And then once you get halfway and then push through, and then when you're, 3/4 of the way, then you're like almost there, that kind of thing. Okay. When you're in war, the first punch, the first bullet to the last, there is no more importance. The last rep is not any more important than the first rep. So the mindset going into the last rep cannot be more important than the first rep. If you think about it, people, when they go up the stairs, they don't fall. They fall when they're coming down the stairs, because they lose. People fall when they're coming down the mountain, not when they're going up the mountain. So there's that thing there that has to be considered. But the frame of mind has to be when you catch the mind and be like, I wonder how easy it's going to be.
Yeah.
Because now when you say, I wonder how easy it's, because you have to catch the mind when it's about to go down that thing. And you're like, pause. That's not me. That's a little bitch in my head. And instead, I choose to say, I wonder how easy it's going to be. And there's another mantra we have is it's not necessary to react. So every time that you're getting ready, maybe you guys are talking, well, I've got that big kettle snatch workout today. So you catch it and you say, it's not necessary to react. I wonder how easy it will be. And most importantly, I get to do this.
Yeah.
Because Paul, my friend, one day you will not get to do it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
One day you're not going to get to go through it. That's the change on the spot. And you're like, whoa, it changes everything, because death is certain. One day when you go to sleep, you're not waking up the next day. And one day when you go to wake up in the morning, you're not going to sleep at night. Here's the reality of it. One day that will be true. So you're not going to get to do this other than the moment that you're doing it, because it's not guaranteed you're going to get to do it later. So you get to do it. More importantly, when chaos hits and we have these types of things, look up and be like, I get to go through this because I'm alive. I get to do this. That will change your whole relationship with it. And instead of dispersing your energy, you will gather more energy and then embrace the pain. Be like, don't push away your brother. That snatch or the clean and jerk or whatever your long cycle, whatever you're working on. Hey, it's your brother. You embrace him like your brother and say, let's go. But oftentimes we want to push it away. And in pushing it away, we've drained so much time, energy, and effort that now we lost all that. So now you're going in empty. Anyways.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I was on Facebook today and a picture of a friend I lost about 10 years ago came up, and I was thinking, and he actually fell down the stairs one night. And, you know, he was in his mid-20s, and he won't get to do anything, you know, and I get to do so much. And, you know, it's, you have to kind of, I mean, with the kids and stuff like that, you sometimes say, you know, he's not going to be 5 forever. He's not going to be, you know, let's just enjoy it and be present, because I can get so busy, so crazy, and so stressed out with the amount of stuff I'm doing that it's difficult to find that peace and cherish that moment. I think this is an awesome place to leave the podcast. And I'm going to be cycling down to work, having my brain kind of try and process it and try and find the best way to kind of implement it. And thank you very much for your time today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, guys. A pleasure to meet you guys.
So, Peter, do you want to leave with any particular thoughts?
It's been fantastic. One thing, based on what we've just been talking about there, Paul sends me my stuff through on a Sunday, and I look forward to it. Yeah. I'm like, I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see it. And then I go to bed on Sunday night, and I'm like, right, tomorrow morning I get it. Like, yeah, you've just said I get to do this. I get to, like, because the numbers will have gone up slightly, say, or whatever, and I'm like, oh, that's it's moving in the right direction. And I never think about it. I just get up and I'm like, right, I'm doing this now. I just like, right, I've got pull-up bar out there, I've got bells there, I've got this, that, and I'm like, I'm doing this now, and just go and do it. And I sometimes I used to think, will this work? Will it not? Will it be hard? Will it not? Now I'm just like, I'm just gonna do it, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
But no, that's brilliant. And the big, if anyone's watching, they wouldn't have been able to see this because Harinder was talking at the time. But I put my arms up when he said, you get to be 70 and do this stuff and run around and show your kids how strong you are and how you can still keep up with them or be faster than them and your grandkids and whatever. And I talk about that all the time. Anything you're doing now. So you said something as well about knowing yourself. It's knowing yourself, but yourself is you in every form. You, because you're not just you, you're you from 20 years ago, you're you from 10 years ago, you're you now, you're you in, it's the whole of you, right? Which is massive, isn't it? And I put something out about this today. People talk about, what would you say to yourself 20 years ago to maybe change who you are today if you want to, if you're not happy with who you are or whatever? What would you say to them? Now you've got the opportunity to have that conversation with who you are now. So I'm the same age as you, Harinder, 44. You've got the opportunity to have a conversation with who you are now. So in 20 years' time, you don't want to go back and kick your ass and say, why didn't you do this? So you do today what you in 20 years' time would want. Because most people, the you in 20 years' time, I feel sorry for that person because he or she have got to deal with what you're doing now.
Yeah.
So make them proud of you. What
did Jim say?
What I say.
Jim Hatcher said, "Get up." What did he say? You stupid old fool. That's what he called himself from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Because he stopped training. He stopped taking care of himself.
Yeah.
Look, okay, so that was the Health Oddity podcast with Harinder. Harinder, how can people find out more about what you do? What are you offering people, and to tell us how they can connect with you?
They can go to sifusing.com. That's SIFUSINGH.com for anything martial arts related. I have a mind boxing program. It's spelled mindboxing.com. This is a 6-week program. Every day you follow along to help you with your mindset. If you want to get calm, if you want to have, we call it the perfect exercise for mental fitness and physical wellness to add on to your physical practices, you go there. And, I have a page called The Masterful Man, in which I have coaching for men who are seeking to not just better themselves and better their families, but reach a point where, the ultimate goal of strength that I'll leave everybody with is when we are strong, that means every place we go, we can be there for people. So we always say, wherever I go, anyone in need has a friend. Wherever I am, anyone in danger has somebody to help them. And when I come home, they're happy to see me. So strength is a gift And if we have strength, we can be there to act on the strength and to help everybody. And I think that's the ultimate goal of all this work. So how can we get out of our own way to help people and figure out a way to serve?
Brilliant. So thanks for listening, guys. Please do subscribe, write a review, share this podcast, and we'll see you next week. I can't remember who we got. Oh, I don't know. Who we got?
We're talking to Fabio this weekend.
Oh,
Me and James, because I'm at James's place. We're doing a strong first thing, and Fabio Zonin will be there, so he's on the next one.
Maybe
in person.
Well, can you put me on the phone as a little gremlin in the corner on your shoulder?
We might be able to if you're available. We should be able to. I don't know when we're doing it yet.
At the time. So anyway, guys, take care. Speak to you soon. Bye.
Take care.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.